Hi, Artis. Hi, everyone. Good morning, everyone. So let's kick off this webinar. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Winning in France, a Market Entry Playbook for UK Health Innovators. My name is Caroline Chauché. I am co-managing partners at Strategic Healthcare Advisors, and it's a pleasure to welcome you all. So over the next hour, we are going to explore what it takes to succeed in France. Okay, a healthcare market that is worth 333 billion annually and serving a population of 68.6 million people. As Europe's second larger healthcare market, France offers enormous opportunities for health innovators, yet it is still often overlooked by UK companies looking to expand internationally. So today, together, we will examine the opportunities, unpack the key challenges, and most importantly, hear practical advice and real-world experiences from experts and UK entrepreneurs who are successfully navigating the French healthcare market. So we hope that you will leave today with actionable insights and a greater confidence in your market entry strategy. Please also note that this webinar is being recorded, and we will share the recordings with all participants after the session. And okay, it is now my great pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Artis Gallier from the UK Business Centre Lille. And Artis, thanks for being with us today. The floor is yours to kick off the session and introduce our distinguished panelists.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Hello, everyone. So I'm Artis Gallier. I'm the director in charge of the UK, Ireland, and India at Nord France Invest, which is the investment promotion agency for the Hauts-de-France region in the north of France, and one of the co-founders of the UK Business Centre Lille. So it's a great pleasure to be here with all of you today. So we are a number of organizations setting up this webinar today. So Nord France Invest and the UK Business Centre Lille, as I just mentioned. But we also organised it in partnership with DBT, the Department for Business and Trade, DBT Scotland, the Scottish Development International team, and obviously Strategic Healthcare Advisors are represented here today by Caroline and Eric. So they're a tremendous organisation, I think accumulating about 200 years of health expertise. So obviously these are the right sort of people that you would want to talk to for anything related to accessing European health markets. So what's in it for you today, and why should you spend the next hour with us? So first of all, because you will hear about EU market access, do's and don'ts, and how you could basically structure your operations in order to successfully sell into European markets and to European clients. Second, you will hear a lot of medtech expertise, in particular from a number of companies and practitioners in that sector. And finally, you will hear firsthand from really strong service providers from our network of the UK Business Centre Lille, people who can really tell you what your options actually are if and when you decide that you want to start selling into European markets. And then, so we'll have a panel discussion, and towards the end, we'll hear the results of the survey that we actually sent to a number of companies to ask them about what the specific hurdles were in terms of starting to access European markets. So now, without further ado, I'll start introducing the panel. So I've already introduced myself, but maybe just a couple of words on the UK Business Centre Lille. It's basically a service centre for British companies based in Lille, the regional capital of the Hauts-de-France region in the north of France. We launched that service 3 years ago, and we've already helped 170 British companies in their EU market access issues. So it's basically a service centre, and the core offer really is access to a wide network of service providers that are all competent, trustworthy, and English speaking. So it's not just about telling you what you should do when you're starting to look at selling to European clients, but it's also who you should actually do it with. And obviously, we're very happy to have this webinar today, and happy to have any specific individual queries and questions after the webinar. So by all means, feel free to reach out to us. So on the panel, we have Eric Del Cotto from Strategic Healthcare Advisors. So he has more than 25 years experience in the health market, and he sits on the Franco-British Chamber of Commerce. And so he would bring a really strong expertise on procurement and how to actually get a product adopted in France, which is what you would want ultimately. Then we have Kyun Thibault He's the founder of Covartim, and they basically take medtech products from concept through to design freeze and regulatory sign-off, so which can be quite a long and daunting process. So he will bring the engineering and compliance view on that panel. Then we have Audrey Gugino-Crenu. So she is a chartered accountant and partner at Forvis Mazars, the international professional services firm, which you certainly all have already heard about, covering legal issues, tax, accounting, and HR. Then, so we should have had with us Christelle Rondel, who's a project director in charge, in particular, of the health sector at Nord France Invest, so one of my colleagues, but she's unfortunately unable to join us today. But she's represented today by Arthur Lazier, who is another of my colleagues and who will be able to tell us about the health sector in the region. And last but certainly not least, we have Salvatore Camiolo. So he's the general manager of BioClavis Ltd, which is based in Glasgow, and it's a precision diagnostics company. And that it's a very interesting one because I mean he's our live case study. It's a UK firm currently trading with France. So I think that's of key value, obviously, for anyone who's a medtech company in the UK. Obviously, it's great to hear firsthand from a company that's already been sort of through the overall process and so that you can actually know and learn from their experience. So now that we've introduced the panel, maybe let's dive right into our case study with BioClavis. So Salvatore, do you want maybe to describe overall what BioClavis actually is, so what you sell and how it's trading in France today, and basically tell us about some of the key hurdles that you've been confronted with and broad lessons that you've learned. So yeah, if you could do that in about 10 minutes, that would be great.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you very much for the introduction and for inviting me to this webinar. So I'm Salvo for everyone, and as general manager of BioClavis, we work on a core technology called TempoSeq, which is a transcriptomics technology. If you can go on the next slide, please. This core technology has been invented by people at BioSpider. It's an American company based in Carlsbad, California, and they founded this company in 2011. Since then, they've been working with EPA, NIH, Health Canada, just to cite a few of them, and they specialize in transcriptomics and genomics. And the main focus has always been toxicology. So we want to apply, sorry, this transcriptomics technology to toxicology studies. In 2015, the people at BioSpider decided to found BioClavis here in Glasgow, Scotland, with the objective of basically serve our customers here in Europe while they were serving the customers in America. Now we have customers basically all over the world, but also to apply the transcriptomic technology TempoSeq to diagnostics. So there are many diagnostic kits that are based on transcriptomics, but none of them on TempoSeq. We wanted to fill this gap. Here in Europe, BioClavis is partner of Riscanter, which again is a big consortium that is trying to reduce the animal models from toxicology studies to, first of all, to avoid to use too many animals and also to accelerate the process of understanding whether a compound is toxic or not. And in the field of diagnostics, we collaborate with many companies. One of these is Philips, with this big consortium, BRISIZE, is a European consortium. We also have some French labs that's in which we study different kind of cancers. Obviously, we also specialize in transcriptomics, single cell, and other flavors of transcriptomics. And again, one of the main target is the toxicology fields, but also obviously the in vitro diagnostics. We have like distributors in Korea, Spain, and Portugal as well, and we are expanding in that regard. Next slide, please. So what we do is mainly transcriptomics. For those of you who doesn't know what transcriptomics is, basically we have panels that can answer the question, what is the expression, the level of expression of the genes in a patient? we do this in a targeted way. So normally our competitors tends to look at all the possible genes, which are more than 20,000, which is something that we can do as well. But because we are targeted, normally we can do transcriptomics just on a small subset of genes. That is what mainly people who do diagnostic are interested in. Normally, you don't look at like 20,000 genes. You are more interested in maybe like 50, 100, 200 genes. And the fact that we are targeted basically gives us the possibility to reduce the cost and to increase the throughput. But very soon after we developed this technology, we understood how flexible it was. So we expanded the application from transcriptomics also to genomics. So we are able to detect the variants in the DNA of each patient, or as they are called, the SNPs. And this is the only difference between the site here in Glasgow and the one in America. We also provide bioinformatics support. So normally people run transcriptomics, get the data, and then pass the data to another company who does data analysis. We obviously know the technology, so we have in a way an advantage in doing the data analysis. Next slide, please. In terms of the applications of this technology, when it comes to transcriptomics, we applied it to recurrence risk of breast cancer, for example. We recently published a paper on the classification of Alzheimer and Parkinson disease patients, and this was done starting from just blood spot. So one of the advantages of the technology, one of the reasons why people tend to work with us, is because we don't have to purify the samples. We work with a very simple input sample. In the case of Alzheimer and Parkinson, we worked basically on spot of blood on filter paper, which is very easy to obviously collect. For BRIE-size project, we work on prostate cancer and bladder cancer. And for genomics, just to cite one, we work on cardiovascular disease predisposition. So we check which are the SNPs, the variants in the DNA of the patients that give them predisposition to have cardiovascular disease in the future. Next slide, please. Okay, actually, this is probably the most interesting and important for this webinar in my presentation. And this webinar actually became really, really useful because at the moment, obviously, most of our market is UK, is 60%. However, we expanded a lot in Europe in the last 5 years. However, if you look at what is the proportion of business we have in France, is, I would say, almost marginal. It's like it's less than 1%. And this was kind of surprising. Maybe only Italy was worse than France, and obviously I'm Italian, so this is also something like close to me, and we need to understand why this is happening. And we did some speculation. If you can please go on the last slide. There are challenges for us to enter the French market. And I'm pretty sure there are challenges that many other biotech companies face nowadays. One is definitely trying to understand the structure, the eligibility criteria, what kind of routes we can use to enter the market. So in Europe, in the rest of Europe was very easy. We were involved by several academics in projects that then made us known to other companies within those same countries. So we do not do very aggressive marketing. We don't want to send email around with marketing material, hassle people that are not interested in our services. We only want to make sure that our messages reach the people that are really, really interested. So what happened in Europe was that many people, maybe postdocs that were involved in projects that we were involved in, then moved to companies, and then those companies start to use our services as well. So it was more like word of mouth. We need to understand what kind of process there are in the procurement decision-making pathways. So what makes people in France decide what kind of platform to use, or if it's possible to switch to something else. And when it comes to in vitro diagnostics, then that's a huge, the regulation is a huge wall. I mean, it's a huge wall here in the UK as well. We need to understand what we should do in order to get to the market with an in vitro diagnostic, or what we must do. And it's not easy. Sometimes regulations are very hard to understand. And this is valid also for toxicology. We can do very precise toxicology prediction, but then if the regulators are not happy with the way we reach those conclusions, they are almost useless. We need to identify who are the people who might be interested in our product. Again, we don't want to send 1,000 email hoping that we get bait on someone. We need to understand who are the KOLs, the key opinion leaders in the academic environment, clinical and industry partners. So we already have some lab and some clinicals that works with us. We have a big pharma in France that works with us in the toxicology part. But these are people who basically reach to us rather than the opposite. We need to understand who we should talk to. And obviously, I think this is one of the main things in order to enter the French market is the building the visibility and the trust. I can see already a French lab or like clinician looking at us like our marketing material and think, okay, this is just another small biotech that wants to sell their product here. And this doesn't work, it never worked. So we need to basically understand if we can have pilots, studies, be involved in research projects so that people can understand what we can actually do and build that kind of trust. And I mean, even if it's less important, it's still important. We need to understand what is the competition there. And also the logistics. I mean, we send samples, sometimes human samples, and especially after Brexit, we need to understand what kind of hindrance or frictions there might be in, for example, sending samples that might be, I don't know, in dry ice. Is there any regulation that is an obstacle for us to send something in dry ice and needs to be under 0 degrees, and so on. So these are mainly main challenges that we face in order to be more present in the French market.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Salvo. That was very interesting indeed. So let's ask some of our panelists a few questions about that case study, which was very interesting indeed. So starting with you, Kuhn. So as you see, BioClaps is basically turning a US platform, an established US platform, TempoSec, into a CE-marked diagnostic for France. So in terms of design and compliance, so what do you think they actually need to get right in order to avoid, costly rework later?
Thanks for the question. Because France, of course, is a European state member, we will fall down under the EU regulation. So specifically for in vitro diagnostic devices, that's the IVDR that you probably already heard about. And the first thing that needs to be really locked down is the intended purpose, because everything related to that, risk assessment, performance evaluation, labeling type of study, it is related to the intended purpose, and it may differ from what we have experienced and set out on the market in US region, for instance, where indications for use would be aligned to potential competitors for 510K route, where you will try to sustain substantial equivalence. Forget about this. When you get to EU ground, CE mark will be about your product. So you need to state your intended purpose, not considering the competition. Starting from there, you will have the classification immediately from A to D. But everything that I'm saying is also quite relevant for medical devices, not IVDs. But you have to classify your product. And for most of the cases, you will have the intervention of a notified body. That is a EU designated company that has the responsibility to assess that your product is safe and performant and complies to the applicable regulation. So in terms of product, there are things to actually ensure through performance studies, where you have to show that you have scientific validity, analytical performance, and clinical performance that has been read on the product, but with clinical grade data. And for the EU regulators, if the studies were not performed in the EU state member, they will see that at the foreign data. So you need to make sure that whatever clinical evidence that you build, they are representative of EU, or in this case, French clinical pathway. You target European population, intended users, handling workflows, laboratory environment, as is in the relevant EU countries that you are targeting. So that is on the product side. Then you have on the company side the aspect of quality management system that is quite a bit different than the US or other regions of the world. You have to show that you have performed design control on your product, because in order to achieve CE mark for class B, C, D product, you will be audited by a notified body. On the spot, they will come to your workplace and look at your processes in place, procedures and forms and records. It is not self-declared as in the US 510K. It is quite similar than a FDA inspection for pre-market approval. But you should keep in mind that auditors will come and look at your QMS. So in EU, the recognized standard is the ISO 13485, and you also have to set up this in place rather soon than later for sooner than later for a product, because the whole design history of the product development goes through the QMS.
Okay, that's very interesting. Thank you very much, Koen. Now moving to you, Eric. So adapting a US origin genomics platform for CE marked use in France. So from a market access perspective, I mean, which channel do you think Bioclavis should actually prioritize? I mean, the private clinics or the public CHU, university hospital system?
Thanks, Artus, for this question. But by listening about Salvo and the different challenges that I have understood concerning the launch in France, but the success in France, I think that it's difficult to tell you that public or private. But first of all, I would say that private clinics, it could not be a target. Why? Because today we have very few laboratories inside the clinics, and they externalize to the private laboratories to do the job. That is the first point. Secondly, I would prefer to say that to assess the market correctly, for sure the university hospital is the right target, because you have plenty of opportunities. And the fact that today the concept of the solution is not really established in France is by far easier to get the information that Silvio put on the list of challenges. It's clear that today the opportunity will be to meet not only the purchasers, as it has been said, but also the users, to understand clearly the routines, the habits and everything. And also, when I like to say that you have also to discuss with a different kind of organization, KOLs, it has been mentioned, before saying, okay, should be the like APHP of Paris, for example, or to go to a single university hospital. Depends on the relationships that you can create at this level to be assessed and to challenge your solutions versus the current protocol. Another thing that maybe Bioclavis should consider is the approach to the private laboratories in France. We have 5 financial groups, very important, and they are looking for new solutions, of course, more effective. But please keep in mind that in spite of the clinical studies, very important, you have also to prepare the cost effectiveness approach by saying, okay, my solution can bring the value at this level on results, on efficacy, on time, I would say, but also maybe on economical part of the system. That is very important. And also to assess during this phase of I would say, search about data in France. What about the reimbursement as well? I don't have any clue, but it will be important also to understand this part. It's key. And if it's needed in terms of way of doing business in France, what does it mean in terms of preparation to get the approval about the reimbursement? For that, we have plenty of angles, but it's a great chance, I would say, to think as it has been done in terms of 360 degree of understanding of the French market. For sure, you have plenty of opportunity, but take time and don't think that a distributor can do the job for you.
Thank you very much, Eric. Moving to you, Audrey. So if Bioclavis were to set up a legal structure, which structure would you recommend, and what would be the rough costs over 1 year, for example?
Yes, in France, several legal structures are available for companies looking to establish a presence. These include a representative office, a permanent establishment, or a fully incorporated company. The costs and the level of commitment associated with each of these structures must be carefully considered. It is therefore essential to clearly understand what can and cannot be done with each option. For example, a representative office is very easy to set up. However, it cannot sign contracts and is mainly used for market exploration and business development activities. It's important to note that in order to access certain opportunities in France, such as public tenders, fundraising, or specific financial support schemes, setting up a company will be required. Cost will vary depending on the chosen structure. For instance, running a company is generally more expensive than operating through a permanent establishment, mainly due to the additional accounting and legal obligations. Costs will also depend on how the business is organized. If there are external shareholders, for example, following a fundraising round, specific governance requirements, and a financial reporting obligation may apply. This can significantly impact operating costs. As a result, it's difficult to estimate costs for the first year of operation with precision. A more accurate picture will emerge when preparing the investment plan, taking into account the company's organization and business model. This budget should be considered alongside other key expenses, such as regulatory approvals and commercial development.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Audrey. Now, moving to you, Arthur, do you want to tell us a bit about the health ecosystem in the Hauts-de-France region and the sort of introductions that Nord France Invest could make for a company like Bioclavis?
Of course. Thank you, Arthur, for the question. So my name is Arthur, and as a project manager at Nord France Invest, I support international companies looking to establish their operations in the Hauts-de-France region. And as you said earlier, Arthur, Nord France Invest is the investment promotion agency of the Hauts-de-France region. And our goal is to help international companies to implement their investment projects here on the territory. And our mission is really to facilitate connections with key regional players and finding the best location and business opportunities. And in order to do that, we work alongside the regional clusters, and Eura Santé is one of them. It is a healthcare cluster in northern France, and it is located around Lille University Hospital. And their mission is to bring together companies, researchers, healthcare professionals, and academic institutions to foster innovation in biotech, medtech, pharmaceuticals, nutrition, and digital health. And Eura Santé also supports companies through networking, of course, innovation programs, access to expertise, and business development services, which is very good to know for international companies. I can add that Hauts-de-France region offers a rich health and medtech ecosystem, and the region is home to leading research and healthcare institutions, such as the very well-known INSERM, the Institut Pasteur of Lille, of course, the Oscar Alambré Cancer Center, and the Eurasanté Bio Incubator, which supports the creation and growth of innovative healthcare companies.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Arthur. And our final question, back to Audrey to close this initial discussion. Can you tell us a bit about the JEI status, so Jeune Entreprise Innovante, Young Innovative Company, and the R&D tax credit, the Crédit Impôt Recherche, and how they can be particularly relevant for a company like BioClavis?
Sure. Companies with stronger R&D activity should definitively take an interest in two key tax incentives available in France. Without going into technical detail, this scheme allows companies on the one hand to benefit from corporate tax exemptions, on the other hand to recover part of their research expenses through a tax credit. This represents a very strong incentive to establish and grow innovative activities in France, as the financial benefits can be quite significant. However, it's important to be cautious. To qualify and fully benefit from this incentive, companies need to be properly supported. The French tax authorities carefully monitor compliance with the rules. There are several conditions to meet. This may relate to the nature of the company's activities, the eligibility of the research and development expenses, as well as deadlines and employment-related criteria. There is also what we call the minimi rule, meaning that the total amount of public aid received cannot exceed certain thresholds. So, in short, it is essential to work with specialists who can help navigate these requirements, manage the tax aspect, and prepare the necessary documentation properly.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Audrey. Okay, so we can close this initial discussion, and now I'll hand over to Caroline for the survey results and the broader thematic discussion.
Thanks, everyone, and thank you to the panelists for clarifying things for us and using the case of BioClavis. I would like now to talk about the survey that we ran online. Okay, we have 10 UK health companies that completed our pre-webinar survey. It was a mix of in vitro diagnostics company, AI-enabled devices, and surgical equipment. And we've asked them what they thought about the French market, if it was on their radar compared to the Nordics or Germany. What were the biggest hurdles that they were facing, and the question they had about the ecosystem in France, and if they had heard of us. Okay, so here are the things that they told us, that 83% of the respondents said that the absence of a local partner, a distributor, or a clinical champion was actually slowing them down. 67% named the language and finding a local champion were the two top barriers for them to enter France. And 67% of them never heard of our group and the fact that the Hauts-de-France region had cross-border schemes that could support them to establish themselves in France. So for us, it was a very big eye-opener, because we are here, we exist, we all work together, and we are here to support companies. And so it was very important for us to know that this is your biggest hurdles, and we can tackle them. The quotes, I'm going to read you just 4 quotes of respondents. So what would accelerate us? Access and connections. Some said, I was not aware of this, the public and private clinics, the distinction, before reading the survey. Most of them said that France was on their active roadmap, but again, they were more private focus, private sector focus. They wanted a distribution partner. They wanted clarity on reimbursement and for public providers. So here you've seen that across the panel, all these questions can be answered. So feel free to reach out to us after this call. And then the CE and medical device registration, and how the HAS, the Haute Autorité de Santé, the equivalent, say, of the NHS, as how do they evaluate, the complexity of a medical device and how they give approval. So you've seen that here we have the key experts that can answer those questions. And now I would like to move again to our panelists, and we're going to set the Bioclavis case study aside, and we are going to talk more generally about a company that either is already CE marked or close to it and actively looking into France, okay? I'm going to address Eric, and I'm going to ask you, if I have no local distributor, if I have no clinical champion as of today, okay, what's the single fastest thing that I could do to close that gap?
Thanks for the question, Caroline. I would say when you start like that and you are looking for solution to introduce in the French market, based on my experiences on this kind of expectation, I would say, first of all, I think that you have to define if I understood that the language could be a barrier, and for that to clearly assess the right way to go is to use, of course, a local one as a consultant to help on the general aspect, but on the daily activities on the field, it's nice to have someone dedicated for a period, for example, of 6 months of time in average, who is a French person with the skills concerning your device, your solution or concept, who could really establish all the, I would say, nice contact. We were talking about KOLs, but also, as I said before, about the users, it's very important. When we discussed this morning about tenders, to understand also the length of the tenders, because in France, for example, you have in average 3 to 4 years for a tender. You can have that on national level or regional level. It means by regional level, like a GPOs, it's around maybe from 15 to 100 structure. General hospital, university hospital. You need to understand for the Hauts-de-France, it's more than 100 hospitals in this group of hospitals. And to discuss with, if it's laboratories, head purchaser, if the pharmacist, what kind of expectation do you have when you start with a new tender? You need to understand that and to see how your device can fit to this expectation and prepare that not 3 months before the time, I would say, but 18 months or 16 months in advance. You see, for that, it's really plenty of things. But first of all, keep in mind that my strong advice is to have someone totally focused under your management. And clearly, like that, you can have a nice grille de lecture to establish and to think about the right way to penetrate in France. The second point, when we talked about infrastructure, you can also find some nice now logistic partner who can take in charge the tenders, the answer to the quotation, plenty of things like that. Not to, for you, it's by far better to use this kind of structure at the beginning. And you will see at the step 2 if you need to establish your own structure. But to start like experimentation could be a great help. That is one of my answers, Caroline.
That's fantastic. Thanks so much. And I'm going to turn to Ki-Yun now. Talking about CE marking and medical device registrations, okay, and HAS evaluation. What do a UK or foreign diagnostics company most often get wrong, in the technical documentation and the design controls that they create? And the second question is, where does that create, costly rework when they want to turn to France?
You will be quite surprised the number of companies, startups we see that come up with a CE mark that is self-declared, saying it's a low-risk device, where you actually realize that classification work was not right at all. So coming in on the market with a self-declared product, whereas you should actually have a CE certificate from a notified body, it's completely a business skill. You have to redo everything and wait for 18 to 24 months of CE mark review. So that's a big showstopper, of course. Now, in terms of evidence, you have different type of studies. Of course, not going into too much details, but you have the regulatory studies that you would need to achieve CE mark, where the purpose is to go for the quick evidence on patient safety and performance in terms of clinical benefits, and then do the shortest study as you can in order to submit to the notified body. But then for the AHS, you have a rather large study to look for more health economics purposes and so on. And if you do not tune the study right, you may end up doing multiple type of studies at multiple time points. What would facilitate market entry, of course, is the type of design of studies where you can start for regulatory purposes, but extend the study even post-market to come up with the right level of data you will need to convince the French authority. This is where we see that works the best. But in order to avoid rework, you have to plan this upfront. Now, in terms of company organization, as I said, QMS, ISO 13485 is key. This is what is mostly recognized, and it is clearly advised to be certified as a company, also through a notified body, especially if it's the same that is reviewing the CE mark file. It gets easier. Most of the time, when we talk about rework, it's not on the product. It's about traceability. It's showing that risk has been assessed and managed throughout verification, validation, and the full traceability is there to be audited. That's where we end up doing the most of the work without touching and improving anything on the product itself. That's induce, of course, a bit of time and need resources.
Eric, I see that you have a comment on what
just a
Kuhn
quick
just said.
comment. I fully agree with Kuhn about this presentation explanations, but as I said just before, and for BioClavis case, I would say don't forget the importance to think about the cost effectiveness surveys as well, because you can't duplicate a model from US, UK, and so on cost effectiveness in France. You can do that for the clinical surveys, that of course, but for the economical or cost effectiveness, it's very important to start from the beginning, because sooner or later you will need to come to the market, to the head purchaser or whatever, or also autorité de santé and so on, with a strong cost effectiveness survey according to your device. That it's important to keep that in mind as well.
Thank you, Eric. Hyun, can you give us a rough brackets of costs that you need if you start at the right moment and if you have to do all the rework?
Well, most of the costs will come to the notified body itself. We could be from 60 to 250,000 euros range, because they will always quote kind of initial assessment, but you may end up with round 2, round 3 of questions, and they will spend time doing so, especially if it takes 18 to 24 months. You will have a lot of repetition of this. So it's a long cycle. I know companies, when they sum up all the costs of notified bodies for the certification of the product, but while maintaining the normal the cost of the companies, like people, infrastructure, and still doing some R&D, will be reaching millions of euros. So it's hard to say how much, where to put the cursor about some specific amount, but worst case we have seen is mostly on the technical documentation to be fine-tuned, because the data was there, not absolutely missing, but solving kind of all the gaps through the mirror of the EU regulators' spectra. Is really looking at what they would expect and how it is presented to them, because they will not test the assay, they will not have access to your software, they will just base themselves on documentation. So gigabytes of data, but it needs to have a proper structure, which is completely different than a E-star format for FDA or some other countries. It's really specific here according to Annex 1, 2, 3 of the MDR, IVDR. So you need to structure that. As a company, if you have not done it where you reach the end of the whole development, that's where you have to spend most of the time to reshuffle of that, all this, so that it is presentable to the EU regulators.
Fantastic, very clear. Thanks both. I'm going to turn to Artus and Arthur here, and I'm going to ask you, what are the local incentives and soft landing support, that should a UK health company walk, away knowing about, what are the Hauts-de-France and North France Invest and Eurasante and UKBC can, bring to the table to allow these innovators to actually enter France in a smooth way?
Sure, thank you very much, Caroline. So the bottom line is, so Nord France Invest is an investment promotion agency, as we already said before. But the strategy behind the UK Business Centre Lille is to help British companies in their EU market access, regardless of whether they actually want to set up locally or not. Because, I mean, the whole point for us was to build a win-win partnership, whereby we help British companies in their EU market access ventures, and some of the companies we've helped just wanted to export and they have not decided to set up locally. And in doing so, it allows us to detect companies that actually have investment plans. So that's why it's a win-win strategy. So we will never tell a company, oh, yes, you absolutely need to create a legal entity. I mean, it's a business decision for them. We just present the different cases and basically the pros and cons of actually setting up an entity locally. And obviously, it's very sector specific. I mean, you don't sell medical devices like you sell potatoes or bananas or any other sort of retail products. And as it happens, I mean, the health sector is very complex and very regulated. So that's why it's very important to have a strong network of partners, including strategic healthcare advisors, including service provider specialists like Forvis Maza and many other ones, including for a bank account, for example. Because, I mean, now that the UK is outside the European Union, things can be more complicated for British companies because, I mean, they're considered as non-EU entities. So even creating a bank account, for example, can be very complex. But we do have access to all the right service providers. And again, they're competent, they're trustworthy, they're English speaking. And this is the network that we put forward for all sorts of British companies. And again, whether they want to set up locally or not. So that's why I encourage everyone in the audience to reach out to us after the webinar about their own specific issues, and we can take all of these issues individually, one by one, in bespoke calls. Arthur, do you want to add anything on your side?
I think it's very good to know that for an international company that Nord France Invest provides a completely free and confidential support, a soft landing support from site selection to ecosystem introductions and access to fundings as well. And combined with Eurasante's health and medtech network, this allows companies to rapidly connect with private and public actors, regional actors, of course, and which will significantly accelerate their entry to the French market. And I can add that Hauts-de-France offers a strategic location at the heart of Europe, providing easy and access to major European markets as well.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. Okay, if the audience has any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat. We will read them aloud. And if not, we will reach out to you afterwards anyway and see if you want to work through your own case with the group. Okay. And while we wait for some questions to come here, I would like to turn to all the panelists one by one. And I will ask you in one sentence, what is the single most important thing UK medtech company should do in the next 30 days if they are serious about France? Eric, I send you the ball.
Thanks for that. I would say that entering France, it's not a self-challenge. But I like to say that the first challenge is the market access approach. Before all, as we discussed on this morning, it's so key to secure the success in terms of investment and so on, clearly.
Thank you. Kiyun?
Perform a gap assessment according to MDR, IVDR. You have to know what you don't know.
Fantastic. Audrey?
Get the right legal and tax advice from day one, because the wrong choice and setup can lead to costly consequences later.
Fantastic. Arthur?
I think do networking is a good thing to start.
Great. And Artus?
Every project is unique, so every project needs a tailor-made approach, and we're here to provide it.
Brilliant. Yeah. We have a question here in the chat from Ranjan. Any view on taking a lab-developed test approach instead of IVDR? And does the go-to-market get reduced?
Yes, of course, because you have an exemption from the IVDR with regards to these, but it needs to be carried out by the health institution itself, who will take up the whole responsibility, and you end up being kind of OEM/supplier. But you need to be able, or they need to be able to sustain that there is no equivalent on the market. Or it's not about practicalities, it's really about performance. If it does not exist and you're a provider of something into kind of a kit that can assemble, it may work. But of course, regulators, especially the competent authorities, not the notified bodies, but each country or state member competent authorities are really, really looking into this. France, Belgium, all the countries, they are really, of course, aware of this exemption, and they are really careful about this, of course, for obvious safety reasons. When it comes to software, you can forget it. Saying, I provide pieces of software and it is a lab-developed test, no. Except if it has been done completely, fully developed internally through the IT department of the hospital itself. Even there, you have to show that there is no equivalence.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question from Chris, okay? And he's saying, I'm interested in the private segment as first phase validation, but can you support regarding distribution or distributor identification in France? Maybe I send the ball to Eric.
Yeah, sure. First of all, the private clinics, we have to understand that you have different ways to approach the private clinics. It means that you have more or less 1,000 clinics in France. It shows 65% of the surgical procedures, and you could go directly with a financial group like Ramsay or Elsan, but also with a club of clinic called Elpevia or central purchasing group like CASIC and CAP. You have different ways. About the distributors, first of all, we have to understand clearly about your devices or solutions, but for sure, we can have, I would say, a quick search about what kind of solution would be the best for you.
Super, thanks so much. And another question from Stacy. Does a UK company have to ship through a distributor, or can you ship directly? I think I'm going to ask Artus and Audrey to answer that one.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can ship it directly, but obviously since Brexit, there are a number of things you need to take into consideration. What we tend to advise companies is to ship using DDP, so delivery duty paid, as a framework, because I mean, and we've been pitching that solution for British companies for the past 3 years, because it's the only thing that allows you, quote unquote, to export as if Brexit did not happen. That means that you export with tax representation and customs representation. So you do not create a legal entity in France or elsewhere in the EU, but you use customs representation services from a company, and again, you use another company who can basically manage your VAT receipts and transfer them to the relevant fiscal administration. And if you want to do it yourself, I mean, obviously feel free to get in touch, and we can introduce you to service providers in these two specific categories for customs and for taxes. I think one thing that will be particularly important, and we also have multiple contacts with logistics companies, I think it will be particularly important if it's really specialized goods to get the customs code right. And this is exactly what the customs representation company will actually help you with, because again, there might be certain conditions attached to specific customs code, including potential customs duties. And again, it depends if the goods you're exporting are actually made in the UK or made, for example, in Asia, sent to the UK with minor transformation and then being re-exported to Europe. So these are all the things that you need to take into consideration, but we're happy to have a bilateral discussion to go into more details.
Audrey, would you like to say something?
No, I'm completely okay with Artus, and I recommend contacting a VAT and customs specialist because it depends on the specific nature of the product and so on.
Fantastic. Kiyun, you wanted to bounce back.
Yeah, just for purely regulatory purposes, you still need an importer and you still need EU rep. So the EU rep is the new EC rep, if you know what it is. It's the entity that is representing you. Now it is becoming EU representative, which is on your label of the product, and IFU and all that. And you still need those, of course, because you are considered from UK as a non-EU manufacturer.
Thank you.
Exactly, it's the importer of record, yeah.
Thank you. Here I have two questions from Ranjan and Kanisha who are quite similar. They are asking what would be the ideal partner, to start with either a lab developed test approach for Ranjan, or for Kanisha is a device that's already CE marked, and they want to find the right partners and distributors to sell the product. Where should they start and how can we help them? Eric? Or you? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For the first one, we for sure can help. We have been doing this. Now for the second question about the kind of partners you need, like EU rep, importer, distributor, I think the different people around the table can set that into motion and come up with the right partners in order to do it. We just need to know more about the product descriptions and all that, but it's more administrative work. But I think there are several people in this call that can do a follow-up on this.
Arthur and Eric, have you got something to?
I can say something about that, but when you have really understood already the kind of devices solution and the expectation of the company and why it will be important, we will find for sure a distributors or a partner could be also a solution, or another way is to start by themselves on a small scale. I would say we have plenty of possibilities. Just before all, it's to understand where we are and where we would like to go, with what kind of means as well, and time expectation. But everything is possible in France because we have always some ways to introduce your devices. Or maybe to say no for X reasons, but we have to know before all, I would say, the circumstances.
Thank you. Arthur, do you want to add something very briefly?
Yes, I think the priority is to test the French market to see where you will be located, and yes, to talk with many persons, to be supported by Aura Santé, but also all the ecosystem of the French and the other France region. So yes, test and see what happens, and yes.
Thank you. Fantastic. Okay, we are. This webinar is getting to the end. So for those questions that we have not answered, don't worry. We will follow up by email, and we can schedule a call next week or in the following weeks if you are free. But I would like to close this session and extend my sincere thanks to all the speakers today for their time and expertise and sharing practical advice. Thank you to Salvo from BioClavis for being our case study. We appreciate your time, and I hope that you got valuable perspective on what it takes to successfully enter and grow in the French healthcare market. I would like to thank the audience and all the people who have engaged throughout the session with their questions. We hope you have a clear understanding on both the opportunities and the challenges and how to tackle them now before trying to expand into France. And if today's conversation has sparked ideas or raised questions about your own market entry, we'll follow up. And if you're just starting to explore your French market or already trading but want to increase basically the speed, feel free to reach out to us. We will find a solution for you. And a reminder, today's webinar has been recorded. The recording will be made available shortly after the end of the webinar. And we will also share the material, the presentations, the contact details of our speakers, so you will be able to reach out if you want to. On the behalf of Strategic Healthcare Advisors, the UK Business Centre Lille and the Department for Business and Trade, and all of today's panelists, thank you once again for being with us, and we wish you every success with your innovation journey, and we look forward to staying in touch. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.